Revealed. The amazing black maid's unexpected warning that saved a billionaire's life and fortune. Jonathan Blake stared out at his sprawling estate from the terrace of his opulent Chicago mansion, wondering if the mirage of freedom could be found within his gilded cage. A sense of suffocating weight sat on his chest, as if carved from pure gold. Every morning he sipped his gourmet coffee, but today, the bitter brew matched the deepening anxiety inside him. Whispers of betrayal swirled among the shadowy corners of his empire, and the very walls that protected him felt like they were closing in. He'd built this life with relentless determination, fought tooth and nail to rise above the mundane. But now that same relentless drive left him isolated, surrounded by people eager to take rather than support. Any moment of comfort felt like a fleeting deception, with the stakes ever higher and the lines of trust blurred. Mildred, his longtime maid, and a woman woven closely into the fabric of his life, had always been an anchor of stability. At 62, she had a wisdom crafted from years of resilience, yet Jonathan often took her presence for granted, overlooking her insights as mere ramblings of a caregiver. As he began to drown deeper within the machinations of corporate strategy, Mildred sensed a simmering threat. One evening, gathering her courage, she stood across from him, her brown eyes scanning his face for acknowledgement. "Sometimes, Mr. Blake, those closest to you can put a knife in your back when you least expect it," Mildred warned, her voice steadier than her heart. He shrugged it off, a leap of discomfort tightening in his gut. How could he trust a warning from someone whose voice struggled against the currency of his wealth? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The following Tuesday was drenched in gray clouds, mirroring his spiraling thoughts. Stress knotted his muscles. The urgency of his corporate ambitions simmered dangerously under the surface. Then it happened. A sudden, near-fatal accident on the way to a meeting shattered the fragile veil of control he thought he had. The car veered, the world blurred, and he narrowly escaped unscathed. It was then the truth hit him like a freight train. As he stood there shaken, the blind spots around him revealed their true colors. The betrayal he laughed off suddenly felt dreadfully real. He had overlooked the very heart of what kept him grounded. Mildred's wisdom, her voice, her understanding of loyalty beyond wealth. He needed her guidance, maybe more than he ever realized. Yet in that sharp moment of clarity, dread morphed into a different kind of anguish. Could he put aside the weight of judgment attached to seeking her insights? Could he overcome the biases deceptively ingrained within him? The walls of privilege were suddenly unbearably fragile, and the question loomed, who truly had his back? As dawn broke over Chicago the next day, Jonathan stood paralyzed at the crossroads. Guilt, vulnerability, and fear intertwined within him, leaving only one certainty. A storm loomed on the horizon, with Mildred holding keys to unlock the very truths he desperately needed. But would he dare approach her as more than just an employer? The answer faded just out of reach, propelling him into the tumult of internal conflict yet to come. The sun rose hesitantly over the city, casting a pale light that broke through his anxiety-laden reverie. Jonathan Blake felt an itch of urgency pulsing through his veins. His next steps could alter everything. The revelation that he needed Mildred had ignited a fire in his mind, contrasting with the weighty uncertainty that lay ahead. Navigating the next phase of this unexpected collaboration would demand more than professional decorum. It would require a dismantling of the barriers he himself had erected. He dialed her number, the weight of his fingers pressing firmly on the screen. The call connected with a crackle, and she answered, her voice warm and familiar yet tinged with hesitance. "Mr. Blake? Is everything all right?" No, not really, he confessed, surprising even himself with this raw honesty. Can we meet? I need to talk. Her silence lingered, and he felt the distance between them stretching, a chasm formed years ago by his constant drive for success and the societal boundaries they both inhabited. Of course, she finally replied. How about the cafe near your office? Sounds good, he managed, a nervous edge threading through his confidence. Once the call ended, he reflected on the absurdity of the situation. Here he was, a billionaire, seeking counsel from a maid, as if she were some fortune teller guiding a wayward prince. Pride warred with desperation inside him. This wasn't about class. It was about survival. He dressed in a crisp suit, a facade of professionalism obscuring the turmoil brewing within. The cafe bustled with life when he arrived, its scent of freshly brewed coffee and baked goods a stark contrast to the storm brewing in his mind. Jonathan spotted Mildred sitting at a corner table, her presence solid and calming, a beacon of wisdom amidst the chaos. She offered a nod as he approached, her brow slightly furrowed, betraying her own concern. Mr. Blake, she greeted, and her tone immediately reminded him of years spent in her silent understanding, of dismissing her insights with a wave of his hand. Mildred, please. I need your help, he said, surprise lacing his voice as vulnerability washed over him. A rush of emotions surged as he fought against the shame of his previous arrogance. After the accident, I've come to realize how much I've ignored your advice. She watched him, silent yet perceptive, clearly weighing her next words carefully. You want to talk about what happened? You believe there's a threat? Her gaze was piercing, as if she could see right through him. Yes, he admitted. But it's more than that. I need to understand how to navigate these waters. I feel consumed by poison the closer I get to the top. Mildred leaned in, her expression serious. Not everyone who smiles at you means well, Mr. Blake. You need to trust your instincts. The people closest to you may not have your best interests at heart. He clenched his jaw, the weight of her words resonating in every corner of his mind. Could he truly trust her insights, despite their origins? This internal conflict was not simply about loyalty. It was a fundamental shift in his understanding of power dynamics. What should I do? He implored, half begging for a formula that would solve his present dilemmas. Mildred's response was slow, deliberate, a precious moment of wisdom distilled into a few potent words. Start by confronting your fears, Jonathan. Sometimes the greatest battles we face are with ourselves. You have to be willing to let go of old habits and embrace the discomfort. His heart raced at her insight. The gravity of her words settled heavily around them. Will you help guide me through this? The question hung between them, a bridge across the professional chasm he had once built. Mildred took a deep breath as a flicker of something unidentifiable passed through her eyes. Only if you're committed, Mr. Blake. Facing truths is challenging, but it's the only way you'll find genuine freedom in your life. Her response sparked a mixture of hope and fear within him. This wouldn't just change his professional landscape, but the very foundation of who he was. Unsure of where this path would lead, he nodded, fueled by a resolute determination to confront whatever shadows awaited. As they stood to leave, a shadow caught Jonathan's eye from the cafe's entrance. A figure lurking, a premonition of looming threats and untold challenges. The greatest test of his resolve was yet to come. Would the foundations he was trying to build with Mildred withstand the next wave of betrayal? Jonathan left the cafe with Mildred's presence echoing in his mind, like a drumbeat urging him forward. The shadow from the entrance had unsettled him, but it ignited a resolve he hadn't expected to feel so powerfully. He could no longer afford the shield of indifference he had worn for years. He had to actively confront his reality, starting with identifying the threats lurking in his periphery. The city's cacophony rang in his ears as they stepped onto the sidewalk, but the chaos felt almost muted, centered around the mission he carried within him. He finally turned to Mildred, his compass in this storm. "What now?" "Let's begin by mapping out your inner circle," she suggested. "Who do you trust?" He hesitated, grappling with a daunting realization. The people closest to him, the ones he had long relied on, were the very ones whose intentions he now questioned. Over the years of climbing to the top, he had insulated himself with allies who had grown accustomed to his ways. Yes, men who echoed his sentiments or merely fed off his success. Could such relationships be trusted when their loyalty had always been rooted in his wealth and power? "Joseph and Vera," he finally stated, forcing each name through his clenched teeth. Joseph had been his right-hand man, and Vera, his personal assistant, had been a constant support. "Are they truly on your side, or do they merely reflect what you want to see?" Mildred's words cut through him. "This is about facing unfiltered truths." "Why are you pushing so hard?" he asked, irritation creeping into his tone. "You're just a maid, Mildred. What makes you think you can understand my world?" The moment the words left his lips, he felt hollow. The indignation of the past washed away, leaving a raw confession he hadn't meant to expose. She met his gaze with unwavering calm. "I know what it means to survive, Mr. Blake. My world isn't as glamorous, but every day I navigate a minefield of expectations and judgments. It has sharpened my instinct, and trust me, it's invaluable." Jonathan swallowed hard as a rush of humility overcame him. He had been so caught in his own narrative that he had neglected the perspective of someone like Mildred. He could see it now. Her insights bore the weight of experience often overlooked by those chasing comfort over truth. He pulled out his phone and brought up a list of contacts. "I'll need a way to test their loyalties. Maybe I can orchestrate a situation, see who stands by me genuinely." "Be prepared for the fallout," Mildred warned. "Not all truths are easy to handle. You must not only confront those around you, but yourself as well." With a nod, Jonathan began to plan. Each name evoked an internal debate about loyalty masked by ambition. Through the haze of turmoil that characterized these decisions, he could feel the pressure building. The stakes had risen higher than mere business. His very integrity was at risk. Later that evening, alone in his penthouse after their meeting, he paced the gleaming marble floor. Mildred's voice resonated in his mind, urging him toward a self-examination that was long overdue. He sat down and poured his thoughts into a journal, a philosophy of sorts. A guide to navigate not just his business, but his personal integrity. Writing down everything, he found he was uncovering truths about himself he had desperately avoided. "Jonathan Blake, the billionaire," he wrote, "can no longer remain disconnected from the reality of those who depend on him." As he documented his fears, his motivations, and the looming threats, he saw them take shape, transforming his abstract anxieties into tangible challenges to face. The path he had once followed was littered with superficial connections, but now clarity began to unfurl. It was necessity that bridged the gap between vulnerability and strength. Nothing could guarantee his survival in this cutthroat world, but each pen stroke felt like forging a new kind of armor, an armor made from the raw material of self-awareness. Failure loomed close, but there was a note of defiance building inside him, a strict refusal to remain a puppet in his own life. As he laid his pen down, he stared blankly at the door, feeling an impending sense of urgency. The figure he'd glimpsed earlier wasn't just a figment of his imagination. It could be a signal of what was to come. The true challenge was dawning, and the question hung heavily in the air. How many masks would he have to tear off before the real battle began? The fight for his freedom was only just starting. With exhaustion creeping in, he decided to call Mildred. Perhaps she could help him forge a plan, but when he dialed, an unfamiliar voice answered. "Mr. Blake, it's me," the voice crackled. "You need to know something urgent." In an instant, his heart raced, realizing that the confrontation he had dreaded could be knocking at his door far sooner than expected. What revelations awaited him next? Jonathan steadied himself as the tension coiled in his chest, his mind racing with possibilities. "What is it?" he demanded, attempting to keep his voice steady, betraying none of the growing anxiety inside him. "Joseph," the voice cracked through the line. "He's not who you think he is. There are whispers, dangerous ones, things you haven't seen yet." The words pierced through Jonathan like a bullet. Joseph, his trusted right-hand man, had been the one consistently by his side, navigating the murky waters of his high-stakes world. The thought of betrayal was an unsettling specter lurking at the edges of his consciousness. "What do you mean? You've got to be mistaken." "I wish I were," the voice replied, carrying the weight of an insider's knowledge. "He's planning something that could hurt you. You need to be careful, Jonathan. Observe him closely. Trust no one." The reality began to settle in, lumping in his throat like a heavy stone. He thought back to the countless meetings, the shared laughs, the moments when Joseph seemed to be more than just a colleague. He was a friend. Yet what did friendship mean in his world? He started to wonder. Loyalty was only as deep as one's interest in maintaining it. "Have you talked to Mildred?" the voice pressed. "What does she have to do with this?" "She's seen things, Jonathan. She understands. If anyone can help you navigate this minefield, it's her. Trust her instincts." "Why should I? She's just a maid," he argued weakly, knowing even as he spoke that he was clutching at straws. The insight of her experience began to take root within him. The hierarchy he had previously viewed as unshakable felt increasingly foolish. "Jonathan, listen," the voice continued, growing stern. "This isn't a game. It's your life, your reputation. You need to reassess everything. You need to go to her." The line went dead, leaving Jonathan standing on the precipice of a decision. The urgency of his situation forced him to confront two stark truths: the potential treachery of someone he thought he knew, and the undeniable wisdom he had overlooked in Mildred. He rushed to gather himself, grabbing his keys and throwing on a jacket. His heart raced in sync with the city's pulse, the familiar streets morphing into an unfamiliar labyrinth of hidden dangers. With each step toward Mildred, he felt the weight of his choices bearing down on him. Would he finally allow himself to trust someone outside his gilded cage? Inside the apartment complex, he found her near a pile of laundry that seemed to hold all the remnants of a bustling day. She looked up, surprise flashing across her features. "Mr. Blake, what are you doing here?" "I need your help, Mildred," he admitted, the hum of vulnerability threading through his voice as he stepped closer. "I just received some concerning information about Joseph, and I might have underestimated the strength of your insights." Mildred studied him, and for a moment, he feared she would reject his outstretched hand, the vulnerability he now offered. But instead, her expression softened, a flicker of understanding dancing in her eyes. "Go on," she prompted, her tone serious yet supportive. "I'm starting to see that the world I've built is built on a foundation of illusion," he confessed. "I need to confront my relationships and figure out who truly stands by me." Her nod was steady, a silent acknowledgement of the journey he was about to undertake. "We'll need a plan. Isolate Joseph. Watch carefully. Use the knowledge you have and weave a strategy. But Jonathan, be prepared for whatever unravels." As she spoke, the resolve within him hardened. This was not only about discovering loyalty, but about forging his own narrative against the swirling chaos of betrayal and ambition. "I'm ready for the fallout," he asserted, the words fueling a newfound confidence within him. Mildred's smile broke through the tension. "Then let's start revealing the truth." Together, they began to piece together an intricate plan, plotting each move on paper, a strategy to unveil the layers of deceit he never thought he'd encounter among those who basked in the light of his success. With the intensity mounting, Jonathan felt a sense of purpose crystallizing from the swirling uncertainties surrounding him. The battle for his integrity had just begun, and he was determined to emerge stronger. refusing to let the shadows choke the light he was now intent on reclaiming. As they worked, a thought crept into Jonathan's mind. What if this was just the beginning of exposing far more than he had ever anticipated? What unknowns awaited beneath the surface of his so-called allies? His gaze met Mildred's, and the air shimmered with potential. The time had come to face the demons of deception. Would this revelation shatter what he sought to defend, or strengthen the fragile alliances he yearned to rebuild? Jonathan's mind buzzed with anxiety as he and Mildred reviewed the intricate web of their plan. Each detail felt like a thread, leading to an unraveling tapestry of trust and deceit. Armed with new resolve, he reflected on how naive he had been in assuming that loyalty was guaranteed simply because he had achieved success. "Where do we even start?" Jonathan asked, the weight of responsibility tightening his chest. "The next time you're with Joseph, observe him closely. Look for the signs, how he interacts with others, any discrepancies in his stories. Are there moments when his demeanor changes, even slightly?" Mildred's voice was calm, yet it carried a grave intensity that matched Jonathan's mood. As he met her gaze, he realized this was more than just about Joseph's betrayal. It was also an exploration of his own vulnerability. "I always thought I had my finger on the pulse of my company, but clearly, I've been blind to the true nature of those around me." Mildred nodded, encouraging him to continue. "Recognize that understanding your environment is a skill. The more you know about your allies and enemies, the better prepared you'll be. This isn't just about Joseph. It's about reshaping your entire approach." Taking a deep breath, Jonathan's thoughts turned toward the rampant ambition that had driven him thus far. Success often dulled his intuition, and he realized how terrifying it was to admit that. What else had he missed? He began jotting down potential meetings, moments to analyze, an analytical map detailing the crumbling interactions between himself and those he thought were genuine. "Trust isn't just given, it must be earned and tested," Mildred emphasized, sensing the fire beginning to kindle within him. "You need to reevaluate your standards. Ask yourself, what defines a true partnership?" He contemplated her words and found himself asking deeper questions. Why had he settled into complacency? Had he mistaken cordiality for loyalty? The recognition struck hard and fast, causing an internal shift he hadn't expected. Suddenly he wanted to push back against the superficial bonds he had forged in business, grasping for more meaningful connections that could withstand the strain of adversity. "I need to start rebuilding my relationships," Jonathan asserted, a new determination boiling within him. "I want a network based on honesty and integrity." Mildred smiled, proud but still serious. "That's the spirit, Jonathan. And remember, the world of business is brutal. Genuine connections can bolster your defenses, but naivety can tear you down." In that moment, Jonathan realized he had more than just business acumen at his disposal. He had a hidden capacity for emotional intelligence that had long lingered in the shadows. This dawning comprehension compelled him to dig deep into his personal development. Tonight would be the turning point. He mentally prepared for a dinner meeting with Joseph, shrewdly convincing himself it would be a chess match rather than a social event. The stakes were raised, and he would tread carefully, motivated by the bittersweet thrill of discovery. Already he could envision Joseph across the table, his calculated smile hiding something darker. What was it Jonathan did not know? Did Joseph suspect anything yet? As the night darkened, he felt a rush of adrenaline suffuse through his veins, while a voice echoed in his mind, reminding him of his preceding strategy. In the midst of making his plans, Jonathan felt an urgency to transform this chaotic situation into a stepping stone for his professional evolution. This wasn't solely about exposing Joseph. It represented a pivotal moment for self-discovery and a commitment to fortifying himself against further betrayal. Would his sharpened instincts prove accurate tonight? Would he finally unearth the truths that lay hidden beneath the surface of Joseph's charm? The evening closed in around him as he prepared to step into the arena. aware that trust had become a double-edged sword. Would he emerge victorious, or would the looming deception slice through the thin fabric of his carefully cultivated image? The answers awaited just beyond the horizon, and Jonathan was ready to confront the truth lurking in the shadows. Jonathan arrived at the restaurant with an acute sense of anticipation. The muted lighting wrapped the room in a cloak of intimacy, juxtaposed against the ticking clock that measured his self-imposed pressure. Every breath was laced with the reminder of his mission and the stakes involved. Each minute spent waiting for Joseph felt like an eternity, sharpening his resolve and igniting his instincts. Sitting at the table, he surveyed the atmosphere. Couples whispered sweet nothings while colleagues indulged in easy banter, a stark contrast to the tension he felt boiling within him. Slipping into the role of observer, Jonathan engaged his contemplation fully. Here, he would not just listen. He would dissect every nuance in Joseph's demeanor. Moments later, Joseph entered, the very essence of casual confidence. His smile flashed brilliantly, but Jonathan couldn't shake the sense that there was a mask behind it. As they exchanged pleasantries, Jonathan analyzed how Joseph greeted the waitstaff, whether his laughter was genuine, or if it cloaked deeper intentions. "Great to see you, Jonathan," Joseph said, sliding into the seat across from him. Their eyes locked, and Jonathan felt the electric charge of an unspoken challenge pass between them. "Likewise," Jonathan replied, maintaining a steady gaze. He sensed the invisible lines drawn in the air between them. This was no longer a mere dinner, but a tightrope walk laden with hidden agendas. They began discussing business, the conversation ebbing and flowing as it navigated the intricate currents of their working relationship. Jonathan meticulously extracted information about recent projects, scrutinizing each slice of data Joseph offered. With each revelation, Jonathan internally grappled with the discrepancies in Joseph's narratives. The confident facade began to fracture slightly, revealing a hungry ambition beneath. "How are those projections looking for Q4? Jonathan probed, adopting a tone that feigned casual interest but was keenly focused. "Oh, we're on track," Joseph responded, a slight flicker of unease igniting in his eyes. "A few adjustments, but nothing we can't handle." Jonathan's instincts prickled. There was a significant gap between what Joseph claimed and what he sensed. The hesitation hinted at potential secrets, and his mind whirred with connections, piecing together a larger puzzle of deceit. The wheelhouse of trust continued to turn, making Jonathan acutely aware that everything could spiral out of control in a fleeting moment. "Let's talk about the new partnership agreement," Jonathan suggested. He needed a strong anchor to redirect the dialogue. "We should ensure it aligns with our long-term vision." Joseph leaned forward, his expression suddenly serious. "You know, Jonathan, sometimes it's better to take calculated risks. Not every partnership needs a full alliance." His tone suggested hidden meanings, provocations veiled in ambiguity. Jonathan's focus deepened, and he felt a strange cocktail of anger and conviction. Here lay the crux of it. Joseph was dancing around their partnership, withholding information in an effort to seize control. Jonathan's resolve solidified. This confrontation would not only reveal Joseph's intentions, but it could also reclaim Jonathan's authority within the organization. "Calculated risks can lead to casualties, Joseph," Jonathan countered, voice steady, yet laced with an undercurrent of challenge. "We must prioritize transparency to maintain trust. Otherwise, we risk losing everything." For a moment, Joseph lost his composure. A flicker of uncertainty betrayed him. But just as quickly, he locked in a defensive posture, ready to deflect. Jonathan recognized this shift as the perfect opportunity to press further. Perhaps this dinner would not only unearth Joseph's truths, but it would also force Jonathan to confront his own vulnerabilities. He was no longer the passive observer. He was fully engaged in a battle of wills. As the evening spiraled into an unease, Jonathan found himself on the precipice of a revelation. Could he rely solely on his instincts to navigate this intricate game? Or would he need to tap into a deeper well of personal strength he had yet to fully explore? The tension thickened as he realized that trusting his gut often demanded a courage greater than he had anticipated. The night pressed on, and with it, an underlying awareness took shape. Joseph's charm might be his greatest weapon, but underneath it lay a labyrinth of concealed motives. The truth beckoned, and Jonathan was determined to journey deeper, risking his comfort for clarity. The question loomed large in his mind. What lay on the other side of this confrontation? And would he be prepared for the inevitable fallout that came with exposing the truth? As the evening wore on, the air between Jonathan and Joseph was thick with unspoken challenges and simmering tension. The initially inviting restaurant now felt stifling, as if the walls had leaned in to eavesdrop on their exchange. Joseph's casual charm seemed a fool's errand to Jonathan, who could see beneath the pristine surface, a dangerous undertow of ambition and hidden motives. Jonathan's heart raced as he considered his next move. He had come here intent on unveiling Joseph's deceit, but now he recognized an unexpected layer to his own mission. He had to ground himself amid the tumbling chaos. The realization washed over him like a cold splash of water. He was not just fighting for his position. He was redefining his very professional identity. "Before we move forward, Joseph," Jonathan began, allowing an edge to creep into his tone. "Let's speak honestly about our goals. What do you aim to achieve through this partnership?" He leaned closer, a calculated move meant to convey both confidence and confrontation. Joseph smirked, a fleeting flicker of arrogance resurfacing. "You know there's always more than meets the eye in our industry. Achievements dictate moves, Jonathan. Are you sure you're willing to play this game as intensely as I am?" The challenge cleared the fog in Jonathan's mind. He was reminded of the days when he had been merely a cog in the wheel. Now, he was acutely aware of himself as an integral part of this relationship, one who could either falter under the weight of Joseph's ambition or rise above it. "I've seen what happens when hidden agendas take precedence over clarity," Jonathan replied, his voice firm, a newfound sense of authority taking shape. "You may think you're harnessing the power, but you could also be steering us into a storm. Do you really want to risk everything?" There it was, the risk laid bare on the table. Joseph's mask flickered, and for a moment, Jonathan could sense the internal war waging within him. This was not merely a confrontation. It was a mirror reflecting both their professional values and personal ambitions. The stakes escalated, illuminating Jonathan's own transformation from silent observer to active participant. With Joseph momentarily disarmed, Jonathan ventured deeper. "Let's outline our individual strengths. I need to know how we can align them without duplicity. Your projections for Q4 worry me. They don't seem accurate." The moment lingered, charged and electric. Joseph's smile faded, and the guise of relaxed confidence slipped away like sand through fingers. In its place was a flicker of uncertainty, raw and revealing. Was Jonathan's drive to unveil the truth a sign of recklessness or the dawning of something greater? Jonathan's intuition whispered that he stood on the brink of a significant turning point, not just in this partnership, but in his very understanding of leadership and accountability. It was in this space, where conflict danced with clarity, that he realized he was growing into a leader who could cut through the noise with assertiveness and integrity. "Fine," Joseph finally responded, his bravado dimmed but still clinging to power. "Let's do this the hard way. Transparency seems to be your mantra. Let's see if you can handle it." He leaned back, a renewed challenge evident in his eyes. "If you're that committed to exploring all angles of this partnership, then I won't hold back. But it'll come at a cost." Jonathan's heart quickened. The gauntlet had been thrown, and he knew the path to clarity would be riddled with difficult truths. The air shimmered with potential. He could either rise to the occasion or be swept away by Joseph's ambitions. "What are you willing to reveal, Joseph?" Jonathan felt a weight settle on his shoulders. The challenge to not just fight back, but to pivot and confront the very core of their collaboration. It was a moment of truth bending toward the unknown. But there was more behind Joseph's words, and Jonathan sensed it. A lingering peril that could either break their partnership or forge a new foundation. He had to navigate this with precision and bravery. "Are you willing to make this personal, then?" Jonathan asked, the urgency swelling his voice. What strategies would he need to employ next? As uncertainty crept in, a sense of both dread and determination unfurled in him. Would he find the strength to wrestle with both his convictions and the manipulative entanglements of Joseph's ambition? The impending fallout loomed. Jonathan was now standing at the threshold of his greatest test yet. This was the moment that would either define him or dismantle everything he had built. The question was no longer about Joseph. It was about Jonathan confronting his own fears and aspirations head-on. What startling revelations awaited him in the dark corners of their adversarial partnership? The tension hung heavy in the air as Joseph's smirk contorted into something less confident. Jonathan could feel the shift, an almost palpable change, as the stakes of this interaction escalated. The question lingered in his mind. What would Joseph reveal about his true intentions? "Let's clarify something first, Jonathan," Joseph said, his tone shifting to a more serious breakfast clash. "Making this personal wasn't my plan, but if you're pushing for transparency, prepare to navigate some murky waters." Jonathan's mind raced. Were these waters really murky, or was Joseph simply using language to cloak his schemes? He took a deep breath, grounding himself. "Understand this, Joseph. Transparency doesn't scare me. It invigorates me. If anything, this is the moment we both redefine what partnership means." As he spoke, Jonathan saw the glint of recognition in Joseph's eyes. The realization that Jonathan was no longer just a pawn, but a formidable player was dawning on him. It was clear that Jonathan was no longer intimidated, and that realization offered him a sliver of hope. Perhaps he could leverage this tension into something constructive. "Very well," Joseph conceded, his demeanor slightly softening. "Let's strip this down to its essentials. What's your vision, and how do you believe we can navigate this without falling into a trap?" The question was unexpected, prompting another wave of introspection in Jonathan. This wasn't just about their business. It was about his ambitions and his desire to lead. "I envision a partnership rooted in mutual respect, where our strengths complement each other rather than clash," he answered, his confidence blooming. "Your risk appetite is impressive, but I believe we need a foundation built on accountability and realism." Joseph nodded slowly, considering Jonathan's words. "Perhaps I've underestimated you," he murmured, though Jonathan could hear the skepticism layered beneath the compliment. "But what if my risk appetite leads to the type of bold moves that can skyrocket us ahead? Are you ready to back me up, then?" A flash of doubt flickered across Jonathan's mind. The parallel paths Joseph suggested were fraught with challenges, but was backing him up synonymous with enabling deceit? "I won't be your scapegoat, Joseph," he replied firmly. "But if your ideas are sound and contribute to our growth, I'll support them. I just need to see the data. Numbers don't lie, and neither should we." The air held an unsteady heartbeat, and Jonathan felt the weight in Joseph's gaze. Was this a moment of mutual respect or veiled hostility? He braced himself, knowing that this confrontation could either solidify his role or burn his bridges. "You act like you have all the cards," Joseph retorted, the tension igniting anew. "But don't forget, in this game, I can always find a way to turn the tables." Jonathan's resolve solidified as he recognized that Joseph's veiled threats could only distract him from his aspirations. "I don't need to play cards, Joseph. I need clear communication. If you want to make it personal, be prepared for when I hold you accountable. If we're in this together, let's ensure both our futures are aligned toward success, not personal vendettas." The words seemed to hang in the air, lingering like smoke, fragile yet potent. The truth revealed a tapestry of ambitions, fears, and potential alliances. In that moment, Jonathan understood the gravity of his position. He was steering his own ship now, navigating uncharted waters alongside Joseph. But as they delved deeper into convoluted discussions about strategies and projections, Jonathan could not shake a visceral suspicion. What invisible strings was Joseph pulling? What other risks lurked beneath the surface? He could sense a storm brewing, a fusion of promise and peril. As their conversation unfolded with tougher negotiations, Jonathan vowed to remain vigilant and discerning. Every revelation might push him closer to understanding Joseph's true motives or thrust him into deeper conflict. The exhilarating tension of confronting ambiguity both scared and exhilarated him. "What's next?" Joseph suddenly asked, his tone shifting once more, pulling Jonathan back to the present. "You've set the stage for accountability. Now how do we illustrate that moving forward?" Jonathan felt the tremor of anticipation and dread. The questions continued flowing. Was he ready to confront the shadows lingering in their partnership? Or would his decisions drown him in uncertainty? A decision loomed on the horizon, and Jonathan realized he was perilously close to a brand new revelation, one that would either illuminate the path ahead or plunge him deeper into the abyss of Joseph's ambitions. The partnership, now entangled in potential betrayal and unexpected loyalties, was evolving fast. But what startling truths were yet to be unveiled? The dim light flickered overhead as Jonathan considered Joseph's question. Each second squeezed into a moment heavy with possibility, and he recognized that he was negotiating not just for the partnership, but for his own identity as a leader. Every decision loomed larger than those before. Seeing the flicker of uncertainty in Joseph's confidence, Jonathan knew this was a pivotal juncture. "Let's start by reviewing our projections. We need data-driven strategies," Jonathan suggested, his voice steady. The direct approach offered a sense of control, and he regretted not having demanded it sooner. The caveats and assumptions lurking behind Joseph's bold ambitions loomed as shadows over the potential success they hoped to achieve. "My projections show that if we push an aggressive campaign, we could triple our last quarter's revenues," Joseph said, excitement creeping back into his tone. "But it's risky. If we don't gather the right qualitative feedback, we might stumble." That word again. Risk. It resonated in Jonathan's mind, an echo of the tension between caution and ambition that marked their partnership. Despite the danger, he felt the thrill of being asked to take a chance, igniting the fire of possibility. But the flame was fragile, dancing on the edge of doubt. "Tripling revenues sounds enticing," he replied, deliberating his words carefully. "But we need a system in place to verify this in real time. Otherwise, the risk is yours alone. I won't stake my reputation on half-baked ideas." Joseph hesitated, and Jonathan seized the opportunity. "We need transparency from now on. Let's outline our responsibilities and checklists. Clear benchmarks and exit strategies if needed," he insisted, feeling the weight of his position solidifying with each word. This was not simply regression. It was a bold pivot towards integrity. Relaxation washed over him as he laid the groundwork for partnership parameters. Jonathan considered how far he had come, from a passive participant in the game to a strategist eager to wield authority. But there was a burgeoning anxiety beneath this development. What if Joseph balked at the rigor of accountability? Would they fracture under the pressure of his expectations? "Fine," Joseph finally relented. "But the more we're standardizing this, the more I need you to be on board with my intuition. I don't want our numbers to get in the way of gut decisions when we sense opportunity." Jonathan weighed the weight of that statement, sensing Joseph's insistence on gut feelings as both a challenge and a threat. Was this the moment where he caved, aligning his moral compass with an increasingly opportunistic agenda? "I can support intuition if it's backed by data, Joseph," Jonathan responded, his voice unwavering. "But that does not mean we jump into every shiny object. My focus is on sustainable growth, not chasing trends." The assertion ignited a flame of defiance in Jonathan, burning brighter with every conviction he uttered. As he offered rebuttals and suggestions, a realization began to dawn within him. This power to define terms was genuinely his. However, as they finalized some details, a sudden sense of foreboding trickled through Jonathan's veins. He envisioned the impending commitments, and a memory of a less-than-stellar partnership resurfaced. The bitter leaks, the broken promises. What if Joseph was simply stringing him along, masking ulterior motives beneath the guise of collaboration? The questions spiraled, weighing heavy on Jonathan's mind. How could he guard against a betrayal born by corporate ambition? "Let's not pretend this is a romance, Joseph," he said, finding his voice strong in the discomfort. "Firm commitments mean accountability, not just trust. If you are aiming for fireworks, I want to ensure we don't fizzle out or burn down the entire building in the process." Joseph regarded him, an inscrutable expression glimmering in his eyes. "Maybe it was naive to think that I could just count on your word. You've shown me you're not as easily manipulated as I thought." For a fleeting moment, Jonathan felt a crack in the facade of their partnership, a chink of understanding that hinted at something more substantial than mere opportunism. And yet, that same chink revealed a painful truth. Trust was a commodity in short supply among rival ambitions. With the conversation winding down, Jonathan resolved to initiate checks and balances he could trust, employing expertise that would outlast Joseph's whims. But the nagging uncertainty lingered. What hidden truths lay beneath their collaborative surface? As their meeting drew to a close, Jonathan realized the time had come to confront the labyrinth of ambitions before him. If he was to survive in this sphere of high stakes, the coming days would reveal not only Joseph's true colors, but perhaps, more significantly, his own. The question echoed ominously in the back of his mind. Was he prepared to face what they might discover together, or would he falter when real depths were unveiled? With that last meeting's tension hanging in the air, Jonathan Blake braced himself for the ripple effects of his actions. No longer ensnared by the gilded cage of his wealth, he was determined to emerge as a leader grounded in integrity and transparency, a commitment that would redefine the legacy of his empire. Days turned into weeks as he meticulously monitored Joseph's every move, unveiling layers of subterfuge that stalked his once untarnished ambitions. Each meeting became an exercise in restraint and observation. Vulnerabilities were laid bare as Jonathan confronted uncomfortable truths about those he trusted. With Mildred's insights and guidance fueling his resolve, he saw the cracks beneath Joseph's gleaming facade, the moments of hesitation, the discrepancies in his stories, and the hesitancy that crept into their business dealings. Jonathan implemented systems and accountability measures, reinforcing the values he had long neglected. He established frameworks that anchored decisions in data rather than whims, transforming ambiguity into clarity with each calculated step. It wasn't just about the daily operations of his empire. It became a profound shift towards cultivating an environment where integrity thrived. Months later, the atmosphere around the tables in his boardroom felt starkly different. Colleagues began to notice the palpable shift in Jonathan's demeanor. There was a sharpness in his voice and clarity in his vision. During one particularly challenging meeting discussing upcoming partnerships, he found his confidence radiating through the room. "Effective leadership means transparency," he stated, fixing his gaze on Joseph. "We must not only speak of principles, we need to embody them at every level. If risk is inevitable, let's ensure it's calculated." That firmness drew nods around the room, but it was the look on Joseph's face that spoke volumes. For the first time, Jonathan saw not just uncertainty, but acknowledgement. His newfound authority was not merely a weapon. It had become a tool of empowerment for the entire team. They were rallying behind a leader who no longer shrouded himself in corporate arrogance. Still, the pernicious threat lingered, and Jonathan had not forgotten the remnants of Joseph's ambitions cloaked in ambition. It was during a routine check-in with Mildred, reflecting on past weeks, that he sensed how far he had indeed come. "I have started to confront my own biases, Mildred," he confessed, reveling in the growth coursing through him. "I never thought I would be in a position to challenge the foundations of my business and myself like this." Mildred smiled, the warmth of her understanding enveloping him. This was always within you, Jonathan. You just had to be brave enough to excavate it. But remember, the journey of awareness has its perils. Growth invites scrutiny from those who may not wish to see you thrive. Her reminder echoed, resonating as he continued to forge through challenges with Joseph. Finally, the confrontation bubbled to the surface. The board meeting was poised to determine their next strategic partnership, an endeavor Joseph had endorsed warmly on paper, but concealed underlying intentions. Jonathan had seen the signs. Eager to act, he laid the groundwork to expose Joseph one last time. As they prepared for the meeting, he stood resolutely before the gathered board members. I urge everyone to focus on not just the potential reward, but the current risk, Jonathan opened, seeing nods among the executives. We will not gamble with our principles. This partnership must be built on foundation, not just profits. Barely containing his growing conviction, Jonathan pursued deeper discussions to dissect Joseph's proposals. With every probing question and affirmation from his team in support, Jonathan navigated through each detail with intention, illuminating discrepancies Joseph had hoped would remain buried. Jonathan, why are we looking so closely at these numbers? Joseph challenged, a trace of desperation creeping through his facade. The opportunity here will elevate us beyond any other investment this year. Perhaps because we can't afford blind ambition, Jonathan countered firmly, marching toward the crux. Your data does not support this venture as you suggest. I fear we risk not only our reputation but our integrity too. The room buzzed with tension. Jonathan's words sparked an undeniable flare of clarity. It had taken months to distill this essence of accountability into a singular moment, and it was finally crystallizing. Joseph's facade cracked under the weight of scrutiny as he faltered, blurring his capacity to manipulate truth. You need to look within, Joseph. We cannot be partners unless we choose to embrace accountability. I've grown tired of shadows lurking behind our ambitions, Jonathan declared, surveying his team who remained anchored by his unwavering conviction. A hushed silence filled the room. With each pause, Jonathan felt the weight of his journey transform into strength. He had not only conquered Joseph's manipulation, he had fortified his self-worth, proving to himself that transparency was a rare virtue missing in their world, while illuminating it thoroughly before others. Then, as unexpected, his colleagues began to speak, encouraging a genuine route to operational clarity, a collective validation of Jonathan's transformation. The dialogue shifted toward transparency, partnership, and shared vision. His identity was no longer just a wealthy businessman, but an empowered leader, cultivating truth. With the meeting adjourned, and an empowered board rallying behind the values Jonathan had forged, he departed the office with a sense of profound satisfaction. The journey had been an arduous one, but he had emerged fortified in presence and purpose. Days passed, and as the shadows of deceit were dismantled, Jonathan stood in a meeting room with Mildred, grateful as ever. I could never have arrived at this juncture without your guidance, he admitted sincerely. Mildred positioned herself, her warm gaze holding stories untold. You did the work, Jonathan. It was always within you to lead with integrity. You simply needed to uncover it. That moment crystallized the essence of his transformation. Jonathan was confident, capable, and fiercely devoted to a life of purpose. His achievements were not just accolades in business. They signified authentic growth as a man committed to navigate the unpredictable landscape of corporate life. Jonathan stepped back into the world that awaited, ready to tackle whatever challenges came his way with newfound clarity. No longer a whisper in the shadows, but a life force filled with authenticity and undeniable strength. Believe in your own transformation, for the journey begins with the first step taken toward clarity. You need to subscribe now to our channel for more transformative stories like Jonathan's. Leave a like now to fuel this story forward. Each click helps spread awareness. Comment below with your thoughts and theories about Jonathan's courageous journey. Share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to be inspired by stories of resilience and growth. Don't wait even one more second. Your support is crucial.